Okay, so good morning, everybody. And we decided that today we will start with something which relates more to the structure of the text than with the metadata, strictly speaking, because there was an interest yesterday about that. We will start with the structure of the text. If you have columns, if you have text parts, if you have things like that. And I think so far Janan said that she has such things, but it for sure each and every one of you will have to deal with this problem at one point or another. So probably we will start with this, and we'll see how it's going. Now I'm gonna share my screen. Okay, I hope you see it. So, as we saw yesterday, the main editorial text of the monument is nested within the text element, body sub-element, and then several divs, several div elements, each one of which stands for division. There's div type edition, div type commentary, div type apparatus, etc., etc. And in the edition part, because the div element is something that you can repeat, it's a recursive element. It's not like other elements. For example, in text element, you cannot have another text sub-element, but there are elements in which you can have the same element as a daughter element to it. And as we saw yesterday, first name is one such element. You can have first name within a first name, and within the div type edition element, which is the edition of description, you can have a sub-element div type text part. And then if you want to put numbers or index in some way the different sub-elements, as they are usually done in the printed editions, you can have, except for the part, which is the text part, which is obligatory for this type of division, you may have subtype, fragment, and number, which number can be like 1, 2, 3, Arabic 1, 2, 3 in Roman numerals, ABC, or in whatever way you have chosen to indicate your text fragments. Usually in the printed editions, they're done like this with the small Roman numerals. So you can then have the text of the fragment as it is, and you can have subdivisions nested within different subdivisions. For example, if you have like two sides of a sarcophagus or two columns, each one of which is subdivided into separate fields. For example, you have monument with column A and column B, and then in column A you have two subdivisions, two surfaces on which there is a text, and in column B you have 1, 2, 3. You can nest subdivisions within other subdivisions in the encoding of the text, just as they are actually nested on the layout of the monument itself. So you have div type edition, div type text part, subtype column, number A, and then you can have another subdivision div type text part, which is nested within the broader text part division. And you just give it a different subtype attribute with a different value. If this here is a column, this could be a section of the column, and you can give the respective I wouldn't say numbers, I would say indices of the different parts of the text. But you can do it easily while encoding the monument. There is, of course, a more complex case when you have overlapping divisions. You have fragments of a text which was originally divided in columns, but you have a fragment which originally was contains parts from two original columns, as you can see here on the on this schema, and you can then have the div type text part, subtype fragments, and then you give numbers to your fragments depending on what the structure of what is preserved you have. So, and here you can have, again, several fragments encompassing different columns. Fragment 1 encompassing text from column A and B. Fragment 2 encompassing text from column A only. And fragment 3 encompassing text from columns B and C originally. You just order the subtypes and the numbering in the way which you want them. For example, here the subtype fragment and the number of the fragment is the parent element, and the columns from which originally the fragment consisted are daughter elements to it. But the principle is the same, and you see that there's nothing different. You simply need to imagine the fragmentary text and its parts, preserved or not, in a way that would allow you to then construct the hierarchy of elements and of the sub-elements. If the fragments, as you can see here, the thing which is preserved will be the leading part of your structure, then you put it in first place and the columns as its daughter elements. If it is the other way around, you put the column as in here, you put the column as a first element. But since in all cases we deal with fragments or parts nested within other fragments or parts, we have a relationship of a whole versus a part. The principle is the same, and EpiDoc, with its structure of hierarchically nested elements, gives you an opportunity to arrange it as you want, and then it will be displayed via front-end service like EFES accordingly. And there could be a running text also across parts, which then is best solved not on the level of divisions and subdivisions of text, but on the level of the text itself. If you remember, and if you open your EpiDoc template, you will see that we have text, body, and then within the body, the main element within which the whole text is nested is, it could be P, it could be paragraph, but it's more recommendable according to the EpiDoc guidelines to use this AB element, which originally stood for anonymous block. And within this AB element, which contains all of your text, then you have, as in this Monumentum Ancyranum, in this Res Geste Divi Augusti, you have a text which runs across lines, and then you have a column break here. And if the text continues, CB stands for column break, and except from line breaks, you can have an empty element called column break, with which you can designate a separation between different columns within the text itself. And if you have a text which runs across columns, you can, of course, you can have a number of the column here, and since this is an empty element, you can, of course, tag personal names and things like that across it. And this should be no problem. Non-citation text parts. You see, this is one text running across several tiles. Here, what do we have? We can have an empty element within the text following the line beginning element, which is called milestone. And then you can have boundaries. You can signify boundaries of the different blocks or the different tiles which underlie this running text. And this will be another empty element which signifies boundaries, which should not interfere with the structure of the text itself and whatever you decide to mark up in the text itself. For example, personal names or supplied reason lost or things like that. I don't know, by the way, if this is neatly displayed in EFES, but this is a matter of doubling with the embedded transformation scenarios, which are several that have been used for different projects, and some of them are better in some respects, while others are better in other respects, and you can choose in between them. I'm kind of anticipating what you'll hear from Martina in the next 1 or 2 days. And you can, with some more acquaintance with the guidelines, you can try and double with them. So yes, here we can have at least the inline numbering. So you can make the transformation scenario to display to you the numbering in between the lines of the text. And yes, to summarize, we have a subdivision of the div type edition, which bears the attribute type text part. The subtype is non-constrained. You can use whatever you want, and you can arrange them in whatever order you want. Text part main nest. And you can use other empty elements such as column break, page break, which is relatively rare in EpiDoc, but it exists, and you can use milestones for all the other things which are different than a column. And all these elements are empty, so they are not, there are no problems with overlapping, and more or less this is it. So you can encode it properly. How it will be displayed, it's completely another story, but in the default embedded scenario in EFES, you have at least the number of the columns and the sections. They display quite neatly, as far as I remember, and you will be able to see this if you encode an inscription like that and display it with your EFES after you learn this afternoon how to do it. So yes, more or less this is it, in not in great detail, but it's pretty straightforward, I think. And do you have anything to ask about that? Or to say? So people ask if I have a block which has an inscriptions on different sides, how and where can I put the information regarding front or back side? I think it's the same as with the columns and fragments. You just give to the subtype attributes values such as front and back. This is the easiest possible way to do it as far as I'm concerned.
If I may add on this, we have this issue, so which is a non-issue actually for every of our inscriptions, because we are dealing with seals, and the main difference between seals and normal, let's say, inscriptions is that seals always have two sides. So we created pretty much, we embedded in the schema the value recto and verso, which was better. I mean, it's better suited because it's supported by TI, instead of creating, for example, obverse and reverse, which would be like only numismatic and sigillography specific. So we are dealing with div type edition, subtype recto, div type edition, subtype verso. That's how we're doing that.
But yes, in any case, you do it in the subtype element of the text type. Yeah, of course, same holds true if anyone decides to encode coin legends, which I hope that someday somebody will do. We need this also for numismatic, and the principle will be the same as with seals and the inscriptions which have maybe military diplomas, also tables with letters such as the Vindolanda ones, for example. Many objects may have writings on both sides. So yeah, if this, I hope this more or less answers your question. How do you deal with the divisions and fragments? And if yes, then the next thing we move to metadata proper. And the next thing we have is, you all have the shared documents. I can once again share it with you if you happen to have lost it in the chat. And according to the schedule which we agreed upon today, next thing is dates, dating criteria, and age of death. And you can, as always, follow on your computers what I'm showing on the screen. This is a sort of transitory presentation because it will deal with time periods and dates as contained in the text of the document, as well as in the part of the metadata which deals with the origin of the monument, the history of the monuments is dating. So part of it deals with the metadata, properly speaking. Of course, in the description of the monument, you can have running text in which you can then mark up and annotate parts of the running text to indicate date. You can say, okay, this is a date. But you also have in your EpiDoc template after the physical description of the monument and its hands, you have the history element. Here you see it here coming right after the physical description has ended. And in this history, you have a couple of elements with somehow confusing names, origin and provenance, all of which have to deal with dates, more or less. And origin has two sub-elements, auric place and auric date. Now we will deal with the auric date one. So if you say that this is something, you can have, of course, an exact date, and we will see how you can encode this. But if you have a more general dating, such as 3rd century BCE, before the Christian era, you can have in auric date two attributes, which are, not before and not after. And the thing which is to be remembered is that the most acceptable and most standard format of dating is 4 digits. So, for example, if you have the year 300 BCE, you have to put a 0 before that. And before the 4 digits, indicating a year before or after the Christian era, if it is before the Christian era, it is allowed to use the minus sign. So if you have a value for an attribute which concerns a dating of any kind, you should use for the year 4 digits, because of course in the original TEI this is also for years such as 1235 in the Middle Ages or modern period. So if you have earlier periods, you just add a 0 before the numbering of the respective year, because the digits have to be 4. And in case this is BCE, you add a minus sign. Besides, it is preferable to work with dates expressed in years. So if you have the 3rd century BCE, this means not before the year 300 BCE and not after the year 201 BCE. If you have 2nd century BCE, you will have here not before the year -0 200, not after the year -0 101. This is how you designate centuries. There are similar ways to say, let's say, first half of the 3rd century, or first quarter of 2nd century, or the beginning of 2nd century. You use not before and not after, for all these. What about indiction? To be frank, I don't know, because I'm happy to not having to deal with monuments that contain indiction. For now, maybe Martina can say something about that, if the seals happen to have indiction dating also.
We haven't dealt with this at all until now, but I think there definitely, I mean, we have in our schema the possibility of alternate datings of our materials. So we can give, for example, the year of the world or the indiction and so on and so forth. But I could not further elaborate on this because it is still under construction pretty much.
But if you are able to calculate the year plus the indiction and turn it into some standard,
definitely. So, but we would,
this is the way to do it.
yes, and we would use both. So
of the monuments, maybe not in the text. If in the text there is an indiction mentioned, I don't know how you process this, but if there is a date specified by year so and so, indiction so and so, you can just turn it into a standard era and put this in the ORIC date.
Yes, and yeah, and
you can add also an element called precision, which would add a circa to your dating. Maybe you don't want to be too precise. You say this is probably around 3rd century BCE, before the Common Era. But you want to indicate that the precision is plus minus 10 or 15 years, maybe. So you can have, as we saw yesterday, there is an element, there is an attribute called certainty. And if you're not certain in your dating, you can say that your certainty is medium or low. And if you're relatively certain that this belongs to somewhere around 3rd century, but you don't want to be too precise that it is strictly not before the year 300 and not after the year 201. It could be 10 or 15 years more or less. Then you can add the precision attribute, which standardly, if you put it into as an attribute in your metadata, it will add a CA to your dating. What else? You can specify a calendar or a dating method that you're using. So then you use the not before and not after custom elements. And then you have to specify the dating method with an additional attribute, which is called dating method. And then you specify what dating method you use. This is according to the Julian calendar. Otherwise, by default, the dates are counted by the calendar that we all use now, at least in the Western world. The Gregorian calendar. But if you want to explicitly specify, especially if this concerns precise dates, that you're using the Julian calendar, this is the way to do it. Or some other, I don't know. But and you can have evidence for your dating. Which evidence is specifically described? There was a recent discussion in the markup list, and there was a consensus about several dating criteria, which I think if you start writing the dating criteria here in your original date, it will give you the possible values. You have archaeological context. So the monument is found in a context together with some other objects or the whole layer, the whole archaeological layer in which it is found may be an evidence for dating. Internal date, dated by a date explicitly mentioned in the document. Lettering, of course, you can date a monument by its paleography. Material context, for example, in this region, we don't have any, I'm just making this up, but we don't have any marble monuments dating after the 2nd century of the Christian era, because the marble quarries stopped existing, or we have this type of relief characteristic of this period. We have this iconography characteristic of this period. Nomenclature. For example, if you have a Greek inscription from the Eastern Roman provinces in which all the attested persons bear the name Aurelius Diodorus or Aurelius Cotius or whatever, then it should be dated after the Caracalla Edict of 2012, or some other specific features of the nomenclature and the onomastics that may point to the date of the monument. Office, this is pretty obvious. If you have an emperor, and if you have especially the titles of the emperor, he is called Gothicus, but not yet Particus, which can give you a very narrow way of dating it. And if you have this or that provincial governor of the same province, or if you have this or that Byzantine emperor or Byzantine official mentioned in the monument as such, you can use the office as a evidence for dating the monument. And you can have prosopography. There's someone mentioned in the monument whose florid you happen to know from other sources, then this is a good indication of a terminus ante quem or a terminus post quem for the monument. And then we have something which we have somewhat awkwardly called textual context, some textual or linguistic traits of the text itself, which point to some period in time by which we can date the monument. Or titulature, actually, yes, this about the part about the Germanicus and Particus and the different imperial titles should rather be placed here. So if, for example, we know how an emperor or another official or some other person mentioned in the inscriptions titulature changes with the time, we can use this as our dating criterion. So there is a limited set of attributes, values, which you can put to these attributes, but they are very well indicated and described by the schema itself. Now back to, and you can use several of them. You can use lettering and onomastics or nomenclature. And then you can indicate it specifically in the text, because this is, I'm reminding you, an element which could encompass as much of a running text with explanations as you wish. What else? You can put an exact date, especially when it's in the text, by using the element date. Here we see an example from a Latin inscription with the very precise way of Roman dating. The third day before the calendar of November, during the year when this and this were consoles. So you can tag this with the element date, and it has an attribute when it comes to exact dates. It has an attribute called when, and its value should be year 4 digits, month 2 digits, day 2 digits. It's in that format. Oops. So you fill in the gaps with zeros if you don't have enough digits. And if you have a somewhat vague dating, like throughout the reign of Trajan, you can have date from and to. From the year 98 CE to the year 117 CE. You can indicate also the age at death if you deal with a funerary monument. For example, here, viverunt annus plus minus septuaginta menses novem. They lived approximately 70 years and 9 months. So you tag this with the date. You can add a type of the date. We're encoding here the lifespan. And you have here an attribute dur for duration, which is P, which stands for period, 70 years, 9 months. This is a format which kind of standardized what you see very often in, at least in ancient funerary monuments, that you have indications of years, of months, and sometimes even of days. So here you can add like 10 days or something. Local errors.
I think we should be able to insert a mathematical formula which will automatically calculate the local error and so on. But this sounds like an advanced.
Well, yes, and I would say that the attributes to the values of the attributes, such as not before, not after, or from, to, or whatever it is, and the attributes to the date or auric date, or all the elements that deal with the time, they don't allow much more than 4-digit numbers with or without the minus before that. So except from here, when you can have another attribute, which is dur for duration, which also allows for alphabetical symbols. But I'm not sure how you would describe here in the value of the attribute for not before or not after. How will you be able at all to put something different than numbers? So maybe, especially on the level of metadata, if you're here in the history part of the metadata and not in the text, when you can have whatever description of whatever dating they have used in the respective period. But here in the metadata, you probably the best bet is to standardize, turn this into some equivalent in the modern era.
Yes, but the thing is, I don't want to, for example, in the Palestine, Syria, Jordan regions. There are many local eras. Almost each city has its local era, and I don't want to check every time which local era corresponds to. I don't want to do this dating calculation. So the machine actually, if I give a formula, mathematical formula for each in the very beginning, the machine should do it every time if I comment automatically.
I think
Is this XML or?
Yeah, this can be done, of course, but this is not XML. XML is just a way of describing in more or less running text the characteristics of the monument and the specific content of its text. Nothing more. It does not. It is not a programming language that you can make calculate your formula.
Insert mathematical formulas.
No, not in XML. Not in XML.
Okay.
You need another tool for that. You need some sort of programming commands, but XML does not execute commands.
Okay.
It simply describes. It simply describes, and then from the description to the display, you have, as you will see, something called XSLT, which does transform things from one format, XML, to another format, another output, say HTML. But this is still not a programming language proper that can calculate your dates. Maybe there is some other way to do it different than XML. Maybe first you apply this, and then with XML you describe the equivalent to the modern era that that is most suitable. And yes, you can also describe the marriage span. He has been married for 30 years. So date, type, marriage span, duration, period, 30 years. And of course, if you have a numeral inside the text of the monument, you can always tag it with the num element, regardless of the fact if you also tagged the whole phrase as dating or not. You can tag the number itself separately. There is also a military service span that you can also encode, and in the text with the element date, you can do all these stuff. But probably the most important is to be able to describe the dating here, because as you will see, there are many ways to filter monuments according to their dates in EFES, including you have a time slider, which is very neat. You can slide between epochs and see how many and which monuments pop up in this or that period. And now I'm just reminding you that we have in the history of the monument several elements which are of importance. The origin, the place of origin, and the date of origin, to which you can add criteria as previously indicated. The provenance with the attribute type found, which indicates the find spot and the circumstances of the finding. Here you can also have a date if you want to say that this is found in 1953 in I don't know. Okay, you are probably able to, let's see if it allows it. Okay, it allows it. And you can also encode the place. Here we can put place name. I wonder if we can put simply place. Now, not here, but if for some reason, as you can see, oxygen automatically makes the opening and the closing tab equal. This is the one of the benefits of using an XML editor like it. So in running text, you can describe many things concerning the circumstances of finding a monument, and you can indicate the find spot, and you can indicate even the time of finding, or you can indicate. Can we? For some reason it does not allow that here, but let's see. Okay, yes, first year, then month, then day. Yeah, now it's good. 19th of September 1953. Yes, first, but you can, yes, indicate a precise date if you wish. And here you have provenance type observed, which could or could not be used according to the characteristics of your monuments or the information that you have. You can indicate here the modern location, unless it is a part of the museum, because if it's a part of the museum, you should have indicated this above already in the MS identifier part. If it's in, say, National Museum of History in Sofia, inventory number so and so, you indicate it here, and you don't have to then fill in this. But if this is somewhere out there in the open, you can indicate this, as happens with many monuments. Some of them are built into later buildings. Some of them are just put on display out there in a lapidarium or in the place of their finding, on their find spot, or they could serve different purposes. For example, in Bulgaria, a lot of ancient Greek monuments from Thrace have been used as an altar mensa in churches, which is an interesting thing, and it should be recorded here. Yes, the EpiDoc template, once again, for if somebody does not have it. Or if we deal with a monument which has been lost in the meanwhile, here you indicate the last instance when somebody observed the monument. Last seen in Istanbul in 1745 by a French traveler, or something like that. Or if there is a previous editor who made the description of the monument, but we don't have it now, here you can also indicate this, but last seen, described and edited by so and so, now lost. So this is the most important thing concerning the metadata of the inscription. Do you have any questions, comments, or anything you want to add until now concerning the dating and the history and the provenance of the monument? If not, then another. I'm just making sure that we make pauses in between the separate bits and pieces of information so that you don't feel overwhelmed. But if you don't have anything to add for now, we can turn to more general presentations of the part called Manuscript Description. Some of the things are repeated from what we just said, but that's not a problem if you hear one thing a couple of times. As we already observed, this manuscript description thing comes in the metadata right after. So it's a part of the TI header where all the metadata are stored. And the TI header has a main element called file description, which has a part in the first several lines in the file desk element concern the description of the XML file that is being produced out of an edition of a monument or an observation in vivo of the monument itself. So you give your file, your document, your electronic document a title, and for the purposes of your corpus, of your collection, of your project, you give the name of the initiative and you give an ID number of it. And this concerns the electronic publication. Then you have a source description, which concerns the description of the source based on which you make your electronic publication, of which the main part is called MS Desk, which stands for, as we saw yesterday, for manuscript description, because in TEI, of which EpiDoc is a subset, it was originally meant to be the description of a medieval manuscript, and then we just inherited the name of the element to also describe documents which are not necessarily manuscripts, other text-bearing objects. So an epigraphic condition contains physical description, location and history of finding, dates and dating information, some previous editions which are in the text body div type apparatus and div type commentary. More of them, the apparatus criticus, and there is a reference and inventory numbers which can be put on several occasions in the description of your document, and then text translation and commentary. And in most printed editions, apparatus criticus and the mentioning of the previous editions goes before the text and the translation itself, if there's any translation, of course. But in EpiDoc, apparatus comes here in the text part as a separate div, but the physical description of the monument is, of course, still in the metadata. And you can see a lot of projects describing papyri or inscriptions have the metadata more or less in the same format, because they are based on the same XML code. And the MS description module, which was designed originally for manuscripts and in libraries, contains several key sub-elements, daughter elements. So the MS identifier, which is the identifier of the monument in a corpus or in a collection or something like that. If it is contained in a library, in a repository, or if there is a standard numbering according to a printed corpus, because in all probability you have this. Unless you work with a completely new material which has not been published anywhere else before that, which is rarely the case. And you can have MS contents, which stands for manuscript contents. I don't know if you will use this for your epigraphic monuments, but then you have a physical description and, as a sub-element, an object description. The object description, actually, maybe it's better to show it in the template file. This is an object description, has two main subsections: support description and layout description. Object description is pretty obvious by itself. It is the description of the physical object. This is why it's a part of physical description. A physical object that bears the text. This physical object has two sides: the material support and the layout, which means the exact position and execution of the text on this material support. So, for example, if you have a sarcophagus with the text on one of the sides, here you describe the sarcophagus itself. The support is the main element, and here you can indicate the material, its dimensions, and what object type it is. We will turn to that a bit later. And then, after describing the physical support, this is a marble sarcophagus, which is so-and-so high, so-and-so wide, so-and-so deep. And then you, here in the layout description, you say there is an inscription on the upper part of the right side or something like this, or there is a panel with the text surrounded by some decoration, which has this panel with the text has such and such dimensions, and etc. You, here in the layout description, you describe the text field or the campus where the text is placed on the object in more detail. And another part of the physical description, after you have finished describing the object itself, including where the text is on the object, then you can describe the paleography, which is under the rubric of hand description. Hand description may contain hand notes. In the including here is where you put letter heights if you have information about them. Things like lunar sigma or quadrat sigma, or such and such epsilon, or an omicron, which is smaller and usually written above the lines, or the letters on the first line or on the last line smaller than the rest of the text. Such things are described here. Of course, if you have a manuscript or a papyrus at least, here you can have much richer information about changing of hands, different scribes, different marginal notes and things like that. But usually, as far as epigraphic monuments and seals are concerned, we don't have such details, but it is recommendable if you have some description of the script and the paleography of the monument to say something about it. Yes, dimensions, if we go back to the dimensions of the monument, are usually height, width, and depth. And if you have some other dimensions, such as diameter, you put another. Okay, let's see if we can do it here. Dimensions. Height. Okay. Width. Depth. And if you have diameter, let's say, you use the dim tag, which stands for dimension, dim type diameter, something like this, because you don't have more specific indications of other dimensions than height, width, and depth. So if you have anything else, such as diameter, if we're dealing with a round object or a cup or a baptisterial basin or something like that, we use the dim type whatever. Here and here you usually put unit, you can use meters or centimeters on whatever, just make sure to be consistent. Yeah. Something like this. And then you can put text also here. So unit and quantity are the main attributes here. Okay, what else? Material. And here we come to the so-called controlled vocabularies. For things such as material or object type, you might have some controlled vocabularies, especially if you wish them to be, if you wish your publication to be in several languages. Let's say material marble, and you can indicate it by referring to a separate authority list, which we have here for Telamon. Here's what the authority list looks like. It's, for now, it's not a pretty big list because we don't have that much materials, but we have an XML ID for each and every one. So we can put the reference to marble as a material. We can put it here. This is the ID which we take from here. What else? You can have, and this is something which is also very important for your collection of monuments. you can have a more or less standardized description of the object types. When dealing with an epigraphic collection, there is usually not an infinite possibility of what objects can bear text. They're either altars or sarcophagi or stelae or slabs or something like that. And you can think, of course, the list is open and you can always add to this, but you can think of describing your object types, such as you can just tag it in your description of the support as a running text, but you can also take care to prepare an authority list of your possible objects, especially if you want your corpus to be multilingual and you want to call consistently one object the same across your project, as we have done here. We have a list of items. This is our authority list. And we have given an XML ID to each type of object that we have. And we have given it in several languages. So that you are consistent in your description. Here, this is okay. This is the XML ID. So object type, ref, so now we have a reference to this particular object type, which can then relate to other objects of the same type in your collection if you have such. And if you put it in a platform such as EFES, then you can say, okay, give me all the stelae, give me all the plates, give me all the sarcophagi, and things like that. What else do we have here? You know, in the description of the monument, as we say, you can also have MS contents. There's one way to do it here, where you can specify the document type. Let me see, this is a okay, this supports running text. Okay, this does not support running text. If we tag it as an AB, it should be fine. Usually it is AB or P for paragraph. This should also be fine. They're more or less interchangeable, these two. So if you happen to have any running text in the description of your metadata, usually it could not just stand in between the opening and the closing tag of an element. It should be indicated as a paragraph or as an AB. And you can also add here a description of what types of monuments you have from the point of view of their contents. We're not talking about object types as such, if this is an altar or this is a sarcophagus. We're talking about honorary dedicatory, funerary inscriptions, decrees, laws, and things like that, which you can also describe in a separate authority list, and you can list it, you can refer to them in your description. This is, by the way, a very good initial exercise to do, to think about what kind of documents with respect to their content your collection contains. And as with the object type, don't worry if you cannot exhaust all of them at once. You can always add to the list of document types later. Here we have a pretty thorough description in our Telamon of types and subtypes of documents, which are, I would say, something like 20 plus different types of documents: decrees of cities, laws, letters of Roman emperors, document of a provincial government, treaties, contracts, manumissions, donations, honorary inscriptions for, we have done separate categories for kings, emperors, Roman officials, in prose and in verse. For Roman magistrates, local magistrates and priests in prose and in verse. For Roman army in prose and in verse. Honorary inscriptions for private persons in prose and in verse. And then funerary inscriptions in prose and verse, building inscriptions, milestones, fortifications, seats in theaters, amphitheaters, in stadiums, mosaics, amphora stamps, inscriptions on bricks, graffiti, stonemasons' marks, artisan signatures, weights, measures, etc., 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 etc. You can have whatever you want here and whatever you think is within the range of your particular material. And as I said, if you cannot be completely exhaustive from the very beginning, you can always add to it later so that new ideas could pop up here, but you can indicate this in your MS contents as one possible way to do it. Okay, what else? We talked about, here you can see the MS identifiers and a physical description. In the hand note of the physical description, you can, here you see an example of what the layout description could be. You can also have a description of the script concerning its type, original subtype, or a period also. And as we already saw, the last part of it is the history of the monument. When in the auric place, you can have the place name, and if this is an auric place, you can have a type reading ancient find spot. And then in provenance type found, you can have a when attribute into the provenance element, which could also indicate the date. As we saw, this could be done within the text of the description itself, but you can also put a when attribute here in the provenance type found or type observed element. And this is it. Maybe I will show you one more presentation concerning the metadata, kind of overlapping more or less with what we saw previously. Do you have any questions until now? Or any comments or anything which is to be found in your material which for which you didn't see specific reference in the training materials that we showed them in the EpiDoc template? If yes, we can discuss it in the meanwhile. If not, I can show you the presentation about object description, a part of which we already dealt with. Okay. Hope you're not too overwhelmed with information, but once you see the EpiDoc template, and start filling it, it will become pretty obvious which is where. So the object description, which is of course part of this physical description that we saw already. Here you see the three main parts of the ops of the EpiDoc document. The root element is TI, and it always contains TI header facsimile, where you put your images and the links to your images, as we saw yesterday, and text. We dealt with the text part yesterday. Today we're dealing with mostly with what is to be found inside the TI header. So as we saw, we have file description, which is, don't forget this, info about the encoded file, the sub-elements which are inside the file description, but outside the description of the physical, of the analog source, let's say like this, are title statement and publication statements. The title of your file and the purpose and the entity that publishes. And then in the source description, so you have the main thing is that you have MS-DESC, which stands for Manuscript Description, and you have physical description and history. This is the skeleton in more concise form. Probably here you can see the outline, and in the outline you can just expand or shrink the elements and the sub-elements, so you can see the outline of an EpiDoc document in as much detail as you want. But this is it, more or less. And yes, with this we already saw. There are optional sections, as stated in this presentation, which are encoding description, which you may want to use to describe the principles of your work if needed. And here in the profile description, probably, I don't know where this stands in the EpiDoc document, somewhere in the TI header, is it? After the, it should be after the source desk. No, not here. But it is somewhere in here. The good thing about working with schema is that it tells you which goes where, but we can seek for this later. But somewhere there are optional elements that you can have, which are the principles of your encoding and the information about the texts, for example, the calendar used, such as Janan asked. And there is a revision description. We showed it yesterday in one of the documents which we saw, which states who worked on the documents and when, where, and by whom the changes were made to it, which is highly recommended, especially if you work in collaboration. So here in the physical description, we saw the main elements. You have support description, you have layout description, you have hand description. Here you can indicate the material. Here you can indicate the object type. And you can also refer to some standardized vocabulary with which you designate the material and the object type, the dimensions, and after the hand description, there is another optional element that you can have, which is called decodesk. You can have the description of the decoration if there is such. As you can see here, one monument, for example, has roughly incised palm branches at the end of lines 2 and 4. Yes, you can have some other things which I think are a bit obsolete now. The type of execution of the monument, if it's carved or if it's painted or something like that. And here you have letter heights. If you have one monument which has been divided in multiple parts, and each part has its own characteristics. For example, it was found in different places, it has different dimensions, etc., etc. You can describe separately those parts as MS part, and you give an XML ID to each part. MS part, part 1, MS part, part 2. And then you give the physical description, etc., 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 to the different parts, if this is the case. But if you have common features, some features that are common and other features that are different, the common features you put the MS desk, for example, the history and the identifier, first. And then if only the physical description, let's say, of both parts is different, you insert the MS part whenever it is applicable. Okay, so I hope this gave you a more or less thorough idea of how to deal with the metadata of the monument. Any questions, comments? Things you would like to know in addition to that?
I only think we will have much fun encoding later.
Yeah. So what remains now is probably start doing this. I don't know. We have as far as I see, we have half an hour.
Mm-hmm.
And if you all wish, we can proceed with encoding some metadata to a monument, maybe some of the monuments we started yesterday, or another one. Teoharis was so good to send us one of his church murals. So how do you prefer to proceed? Or if you have your own material, you can also start with it, or we can start all with one of the monuments, provided that you have a publication with some metadata in it, or a document with some metadata in it, which we can all see. What would you say?
I think that Teoharis sent only to us the files, so we could perhaps like either share them or share the screen with the data. But I think that encoding some metadata now, getting some practice done would be nice.
Yes. So let me see. Shall we share the file with everybody?
Yes, if Teoharis agrees with that.
Yes.
Definitely. I mean, it will be used only for training and
yes,
and exercise, so it's not to be forwarded anywhere else. But I'm trying to retrieve the file myself.
Okay.
Can we share with the participants the metadata of your inscription?
Yes. Just give me one second.
No, I mean, I can also do it myself, but if you want, you can share them in the chat, so it's cool.
Yes.
Martina, I think it's better to share your screen.
Okay.
I don't feel very comfortable.
Okay, but I actually meant to send over the file. Is it all right if I send the file?
Yes,
in
yes,
okay.
It's okay with also the photo.
Yeah, cool. Thank you so much. So that everyone can see the metadata, and it's just a matter of copy paste in the end. So let's 1 second.
Just
Okay, I hope everyone got it. And do we have any volunteer to do the work? No pressure, everyone will chip in and say and help out, so do not feel pressure at all.
I can start if it's okay.
Yes. So wait 1 second. Sorry, but you said you didn't feel comfortable in sharing your screen. Is it all right?
I can try, but I think it's better to share your screen.
Okay, and you tell me what to do. Okay, moment. I'm just opening the file. Just 1 second. Yes. I'm adding your metadata to the text that we encoded yesterday, so it will be very, very strange, but still. What do you think, Mitko? I mean, since we already started encoding that, we can, or should we open another file?
Since we already started encoding that, we can, I don't know.
Yes, we can always copy paste and change.
Yes.
If needs be. So let's.
Yes.
So 1 second, I'm sharing my screen. Wait, half a second. So I have this the file that you already opened yesterday, and I will also open the file that Theohari sent us regarding this beautiful inscription and all the metadata. Yes, so this would be the inscription.
Yes.
Yes.
Is super nice. Thank you so much. And this would be the we can do that too later, because we will still be doing more exercise regarding this. But as for now, what is important to us, what is relevant to us, is the metadata. So what do we have here? We have the editor, we have the authority, we have the file name of the authority, we have also the license. There's no repository, an object type, yes. There's no dimensions. I mean, this object has dimensions, of course, but they are not given here. Layout, okay, I don't know if I would put this in layout, but still. Hand note, cool. Oric place, Oric date and provenance, when, okay, and type observed. Okay, let's start. No, not this. So first of all, let's give our file a title. And how is it called, we said?
Patronal inscription.
Patron.
This could also be a document type.
I didn't get it, Mitko, sorry.
Yeah, it should have a title still.
Yes, yes.
And this is a what type of inscription is it?
Patronal inscription.
Okay, it's just a title so that we know what we're talking about. Editor, let's say, so it's not defined, of course, but still.
Martina, if we have two editors, what is the process?
I will show you.
Okay. I think it was a very good decision to make the markup. You are very with speed. Πολύ γρήγορη.
But that's not the point of being Grigori. I just want to, and if I'm too quick, please stop me, and I want you to understand everything. So I wanted to show you if we have more than one editor. Let's say the other one is myself. So you
can divide this into forename or surname, or you can just put the personal name without any subject.
Exactly. But so for the sake of the argument, let's just.
Yes, but the important thing is that the editors of the electronic publication, I mean, this is the electronic publication, this is not the bibliography of the source, need to be there.
Yeah. So we don't have a translator, so we can comment this out. And something that we did not say yesterday, if Mitko talked about comments and the role of comments in in XML, but there's also a shortcut to do this, which is Control Shift comma. So I will just, because otherwise you will have to type your way into it. I'm just Control and Shift and comma at the same time for Windows. And the same, but with command for Mac. So, publication statement. Who's the authority, we said?
I think University of Cyprus.
Yes.
And the name of the program is MedCyprus.
Okay, let's find a way to do this. Do we have a file name yet? Okay, this one. Because this has to be coherent with all the name files on your corpus, so that there will also be a also for the alphabetical order and all of these things. We don't know. We don't have this kind of ID type. We don't have. This is unpublished, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so we don't have a publication yet, so which is cool.
We have editions for the inscriptions, 3 or 4 editions.
Okay, but this is this comes down. So in the bibliography.
Yes.
So let's.
So it is published.
Yes, it's published. It's already published.
It is, as you can see, I don't know if you can see, there's the bibliography. Yes, you can see the file is shared. So there's a bibliography, and a rather extensive bibliography, but this is to be done in div type bibliography part, which is at the bottom of the text body.
Yeah. So the region. No, what is it? Alt identifier repository. I think we can safely say that the repository
non-applicable.
No, this is a church wall inscription, so I guess
so there's no
depends where it is.
Yeah.
There's no difference between provenance and fine spot, and somebody saw it in another place. This should be rare with church inscriptions.
Yeah.
It is not like a physical monument that you can carry around.
So, but we have to add an identifier, and we can add the administrative unit where it is stored, pretty much.
Yes.
So there's no repository, but it is at the. So this will be repeated more than once, because this is both the place where the
we can also write the town that Pelendri belongs.
Yeah.
Limassol.
Okay. You don't have place name within.
But it should. Oh, I'm just checking my template. Maybe
place name here. Type.
Region, country.
Yes, within the region you can.
Yeah, within the region you can add, yes.
To do. Okay. Then. What kind of document it is? It is, we said,
inscription.
A patronal inscription. Wasn't it?
We see here there is a seg element. When you have to make multilingual content, there are several ways to do it. Either in the element itself, you can have title XML lang and XML lang gr. So you can duplicate the element with different attributes for language. When it does not allow this, within the element, you can have a sub-element called seg, which stands for segment. And then there you can have XML lang one or XML lang another. In the MS Content summary, this is how they do it, because obviously MS Content doesn't allow itself to be duplicated.
Okay. So I'm leaving this here, and I'm putting in a comment saying, we'll do in the afternoon, because we will then create an authority list for Harris's project, listing all the document types, which do not exist yet, but we will do as if, because we're talking about authority list in the afternoon or tomorrow first thing.
Yes.
So support. What?
One question,
Yes.
Martina, before you move on. We can attribute more than one category. How can we do it?
So
We
this
can
is,
say it's a patronal inscription, it's a building inscription.
I don't know if you can put more than one summary. No, you can't put more than one summary, because this summary, it's actually, we could also write, for example, I don't know, patronal inscription in the church of Zolala and so on and so forth, because the more important thing comes here in the support description. And here we can write everything that we want to.
Oh, okay, okay.
So,
Okay.
because this is pretty much the content, let's say. But this is the support. And I'm sorry, I'm deleting all the Russian, but at some point we will also do this in Greek so that so object type. What an object is this? Okay.
I'm not sure for the name. It's not an option object.
But this is so I would not put painted inscription here. I would put,
Bema wall.
okay, so this is the wall
Because
of
you
the,
have to specify the object on which the inscription is.
And once again, here the church murals are specific in this respect.
exactly.
I guess that this also holds true for the seals. You know, the object type is
Exactly. We have object type. We have this as closed element,
yes, yes.
and it always comes seal,
Yeah.
because of course.
So maybe not for all the collections, all the possible collections of documents. Object type is very
relevant.
Let's say, because here maybe all the object types are murals, are legends to painted murals or something like that, and you don't have great many, unless you have, let's say, you also have some inscriptions on the wooden or stone decoration in the churches. Then you can have object types. But if it's all legends to scenes depicted on the walls, maybe you don't need this.
Yeah.
Or if you have a collection of gems, coins, and objects of the same types, you don't need this. If you have a collection of epigraphic monuments, and then you need this, because it could be an altar, it could be a votive relief this big, it could be a relief this big, and so on.
Yeah, definitely. That's why, for example, the Bema wall, I would put it rather here in the layout.
Yes.
Because this is Yes, so I would be more specific.
This way.
I'm just repeating, but still. So object type, perhaps really painted inscription. Material or object type, rather, wall, I don't know. It's actually tricky in this case.
Yes.
Because for an inscription, you would here write I don't know, stele, or but here it's like wall. So it's,
yeah, it's, you can just write wall.
Yeah, I don't like it very much, but still. Then material.
Because it's exactly the structural type. If it is a lento, you should write lento. A simple
wall, yeah. And the material of the wall, do we know it?
We can add plaster.
Plaster, yes.
And are we sure? Because we can also add certainty.
Uncertain.
Okay. Okay, so if you're certain, that's no reason to doubt it. And then here in the P element, in the support, we can be more specific, and we can write prose. So every time there's a P, we can write prose, and we can say, I don't know, painted inscription mounted. I don't know if what I'm writing is
in a tabula, maybe.
Sorry?
Okay, I don't have the image.
Yeah.
Okay.
In a frame.
Okay.
In a frame, yes. This is exactly how. In a frame. Above
on the BEM wall above the window of the BEMA apps.
Yes.
So here we can write pretty much everything we want.
This should be also well.
I wouldn't say mounted.
Above the window, this should be in the layout. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, it's. Do you think this is too specific for the object type and should go in the layout?
Well, the exact location in the church maybe should go in the layout, but painted inscription in a frame is, I don't know. Sounds good. It's a bit tricky.
Enough, yeah.
It's a bit tricky. It's a bit tricky.
But yes. Important thing is that you get the idea.
Okay, let's try. So the hand note, black letters against white background. Do we have the?
Do we have?
We have ligatures, abbreviation. Yes, tons of, I think. Then Auric place. You see here they have an internal authority list for Auric place, but we can link to geonames or to Pleiades. Mitko, can you look for Limassol in the and post the link? So
it should be geonames.
Yeah, definitely geonames. So we said that the Auric place is Limassol. Auric date, do we have a date? Yes.
This is it.
And we do not need to have a span, so a terminus ante quem and post quem, because we are sure of the Auric date, so we can just go like
when, probably.
Yeah, sorry. Okay.
Could we write not before 1100?
is the inscription dated? So is
Yes,
the date
yes,
hidden?
yes.
So if it is so, I would say that it's better to leave it as when, because if you say not before, so not before kind of makes sense when you have also a not after.
No.
Yeah, they go together.
Yeah, they go together. You have like a
Okay.
span. Yeah. So provenance, did you see it?
Yes.
Let's say observed.
EP.
Resp.
Yeah, you can
Because
responsibility.
yeah, this is the responsibility. And as you can see, I defined both your name and my name at the top of the page, if you remember. So you can choose, if we also defined Mitko, there will also be another person to choose from. And since there is accountability for everything that we do in EpiDoc, we can say that the responsible for this observation is Theocharis. And so Jospe has this as this segment here for telling that the observed autopsy was done or was not done, but we can also skip it as far as I'm concerned.
Yes.
Then
they have specificities in Yospep because it's in Ukraine. And a part of the inscriptions were in the zone of conflict. Maybe it's important to state if now somebody has seen it. The same holds true for places like Libya, as far as I'm concerned, because they started doing some sort of, I don't know, rescue description of whatever monuments we have in Libya. And it's crucial if somebody has seen it right now, or we're working on previous editions, but if you're happy enough to live in a place where you can always go and see it, maybe it's not necessary to specify always. But yes, sometimes you need. We specify that we have seen the inscriptions that we have seen in our project, even if they do not differ at all from the previous editions. We say that, okay, the text is like in previous editions, but we went to
confirmed.
Yes.
Yeah. So while we were talking, I added a the ref for Limassol here, and then we go to the provenance type found. But perhaps we have 3 minutes. We go through this very quickly, and then we will go on our break. So the ancient find spot. Do we have the ancient name?
It's the same with the village that the church is Pelendri.
Okay, Pelendri. I will write Pelendri here, and I'm not confident that we will find it in Pleiades, but can you still have a look? And do we know when it was found? No, we don't.
Yes.
It says 2021.
We have it.
Ah, okay, that's cool.
So now you have 2 geonames references for Limassol, the first one, and for Pelendri, the second one.
Okay, that's great. So you can be as specific as you want as far as the geographical annotation is concerned. And coming back to a question that was made yesterday, if we tag like very thoroughly all the geographic instances, but on this Mitko is way more advanced than I am, we can then point them out on a map. So circumstances, do we have archaeological information about this church, Theochari? Like who found it, when?
No, we don't have that information. We're dating the church in the 12th century. That's what we have.
Okay, no, but I mean, when was this church kind of discovered? We have,
No.
okay, it's not important if we don't have this kind of information, because also the lack of information is information per se. So when we close this, and then we will see it later, the transformation scenarios that are in EFES will automatically generate a response which says not known or unknown or not specified, because this is to say that it's not that we forgot to write the circumstances of the archaeological find of this church, is that we do not know them. So that's why we do not delete or we do not comment out this thing. We just close the element, because if the element is empty, it means that we still want it to be there. And with
maybe something about commenting out, we should say.
Yes, because if we are commenting out, as just Mitko said yesterday, it's always best practice to comment out and not to delete things, because first of all, you can always reuse them. For example, in 2 years, there will be a very important piece of evidence that can tell you, in 1840, this precise church was discovered by the great-grandfather of Theocharis. So this is one of the reasons why we comment out and we do not delete, but also because you can always, so that you can always find your way through the template and you make everything consistent and so on and so forth. But the important thing about commenting out, and this is something that Mitko already said yesterday, is that whenever we comment something out, this is invisible for the machine. So this is plain text and they will skip this piece of code. So this is also a note to self, as we like to say. So we can here write, add this info when you have it. And it's also very good practice to date and document everything. So this is 2021, what is today? September 29th. So it's very important. It's very important to add, why it is not validating. Okay. It is very important to put a date everything, so that you know that today we have this piece of information, but perhaps in 2 years it will change and we will be asking, but why did I comment it out? And yeah. So I would say let's stop here and let's go on a break. What do you guys say? And we will resume later with EFES, but during our last hour, so our hands-on practice hour, we will go back to this file and keep on working on this.
Okay.
Yes.
Cool.
Yes.
Do you all guys agree? And wait, I will also send this out now per chat so that everyone has it.
And if you happen to have something else, you can also submit it.
Definitely, if I could just send it, I'm so sorry. Okay, I will send it now. And I also stop the broadcast and wish you a healthy lunch.
Where are you sending it?
In the chat.
In the chat, so
yeah, but when we close the chat, when we close the window, then it will disappear or what?
No, you can download it now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, make sure to download it first and then leave, because it will be invisible for you.
Yeah, it's it.
Otherwise.
Okay.
Yeah, here it is.